Okay. Hey, how are you? I'm Mel Robbins. I'm going to give you a second to roll in. Thank you for being here. Lots of technical challenges today. And one of the reasons why I love having technical challenges is because you see in real time that things aren't perfect. And you also see what it looks like to just roll with it. Let's see if David is on yet. David Kessler, I see you. Give me a second because I am going to just welcome everybody in. We are broadcasting a little bit later than usual because we had some technical difficulties at noon. You don't need to know all the details, but the bottom line is I try to go live on a bunch of platforms at once, and Instagram will not let us use a streaming service. And so having one service that goes live on lots of platforms while I'm trying to do Instagram on my phone, we were getting all kinds of feedback. And so I want to thank you if you tuned in and hung with us as we tried to solve it. We could not solve it, so we did the broadcast on other platforms, and now we're back here. And we're going to be talking about a really important topic. And so I'm so thrilled that you're here. And the topic that we're talking about is that horrible feeling of powerlessness that you feel right now. And we're going to give it a name today. And it's really important that we give it a name because it's how you move through the horrible feeling of discomfort and powerlessness. And I'm going to be bringing on David Kessler. He's a best-selling author. He wrote the book Finding Meaning, The Sixth Stage of Grief. I know him very well, and I trust him because I have had him as an expert on the Mel Robbins talk show, which is my daytime syndicated talk show that's airing nationwide right now in the United States. And I have learned so much from him. And so I want him to come on and help us discuss this topic of the discomfort and the powerlessness that you're feeling right now. And I felt it this week in a couple ways. And then I'm going to bring David Kessler on. I see that he's here. And we're going to unpack this topic of powerlessness and despair. The first time that I felt true despair was this weekend. I pulled up to the grocery store, Trader Joe's in Framingham, Massachusetts. And there was a line of people outside the grocery store. And they were 6 feet apart. And it was raining, and I remembered several weeks ago, there was a video going around of a woman in Italy, and she was talking about how they were rationing access to grocery stores, and everybody was wearing a mask, and I sat in my car, and I felt this moment of despair, and I thought, oh my God, holy shit, like it's come to this. And I started to feel that this was going to be a marathon that we're going through right now. And I felt the loss of normal life, that walking into a grocery store is something I've done 10,000 times, never even thought about it. And this was happening right in front of my eyes. And it was just this moment where I really lost it. And then later in the day, it was 2:13 in the afternoon on Sunday. And I realized, I got like 7 more hours before I can go to bed, and I don't even know what I'm going to do. And it wasn't boredom. It was just this looming sense of despair. And then I went to the park at the Charles River where I normally walk with the dog, and it was closed because of the coronavirus. And I felt this micro moment of despair. And then telling my kids last night at dinner that I think that we're going to be probably social and physical distancing until at least the end of May, I felt this despair. And so it's impossible for me to put words to what this new normal is. So I want to invite David Kessler. He is the world's foremost expert on grief, which is what we're all feeling. And he's the author of Finding Meaning. It's the 6th stage of grief. And he's also the founder of grief.com. So let's invite him to join the conversation. And as soon as he does, we will jump into, there he is. How are you, David?
I'm good, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm so happy that you're here too. And as we welcome in everybody, I see people in India watching. Where are you watching from? Put it in the comments so we can welcome you in. Hello, everyone. Thank you for hanging with us through the technical difficulties. People are saying hello to you too, David. Hi in California. Hello in India. Hello in Morocco. Hello in Germany. Hello, England. This is a wild collective moment of discomfort, of despair. And so, David, I wanted you to help us put the words all the way in Marrakesh, Toronto, Massachusetts, the UK, help us put words to this general discomfort and powerlessness that we're all feeling right now.
It's been interesting in the last week. People have said, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm crying at night, or I get up feeling heavy and feeling sad. And something's wrong. I don't know what it is. And I'll hear them talking, and I'm like, those are symptoms of grief. You are feeling grief. And in fact, you are feeling appropriate grief.
Why appropriate grief? Why is this grief?
Well, we always think about grief as the loss of someone through death. But
right.
A divorce is grief. A job loss is grief. And we have just lost our normal world. We've lost the ability to gather, as you mentioned, to go to the park, to go to the grocery store. We've had so many unnamed losses. If we sat down and wrote them out, we would be shocked at all those micro losses that we've had.
So, it's so true. How many of you, as you're listening to David talk about the context of what we're going through as grief, how many of you feel that? Either put it in the thumbs up or tell me in the comments, what loss are you experiencing in particular? I have a question right here from TL Chef. Why do I feel paralyzed? I'm still looking at the same piles of stuff around the house that I've been looking at since Friday the 13th when we began our social distancing. And I feel enormous guilt not being able to attack it. This is something I'm hearing so much from our audience around the world, David. Why do we feel paralyzed right now? And what does it have to do with us grieving our normal life?
I did exactly that too. I went to the grocery store, I got stocked up, I did everything, I got prepared for this, and I labeled all the projects, things I was going to get to. And after I got everything ready, this weight hit me. And it was like after the busyness of preparation was done, something hit. And that's grief. That's that sadness that suddenly paralyzed us, like we had a sudden death and we didn't realize a sudden death had happened.
Well, for me, I had something very similar to her because our show, they canceled the show, evacuated CBS Broadcast Center on March 11th. And it was so abrupt. And I was immediately panicked about how serious all this was. I left New York. I got home. I've been basically isolating since March 12th. And I was so kind of like in that adrenaline mode, like you, where I went to the store and I stocked up and I argued with my kids until they got on planes and got their asses home. And I got my husband and my son home from a trip that they were on. And I got everybody together and we got the cupboard stocked. And okay, and now we're going to turn this into a productive period. And we're going to do this. And then all of a sudden this weekend I collapsed.
Right. I'm going to move and talk because there's a lawnmower outside.
Oh, I can't even hear it. So don't worry about it. We're all used to it at this point.
Well, it's funny how we're all just doing crazy live stuff here in real life. Okay,
absolutely. Good. And so I also, what role does the fact that the adrenaline that you felt in order to get prepared and respond to this moment only sustains you for so long, and then you collapse into something else?
Right.
Yeah.
That grief is exhausting. That prep, that adrenaline rush is exhausting. And now we crash on the other side of this.
Wow. All right. So what are the stages of grief, and how do you learn from the grief that we all knew about when you lose a loved one? and apply it to become resilient as we are experiencing a loss of normal life, a loss of the baseball season that your kid was really looking forward to, a loss of your senior year of high school or your senior year of college. So many losses on so many levels. How do we move through this?
Well, the reality is when we think about all these losses, naming them helps us so much. And when we think about the stages, they give us a structure. We need some kind of scaffolding. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross identified the stages in 1969 in her book On Death and Dying for people who were dying. Her and I adapted them for grief. And the stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Let's see if they apply here. Denial. I cannot believe this is happening.
How many of you have felt denial at this point? I can't freaking believe this shit. Yes.
Right? There's no way this is happening in our modern world, right?
And now I'm feeling it about the future. There's no way this can last till summer. There's no way that this can go into the fall.
Right. Then we have anger. All right, now it's starting to piss me off. We get angry about it.
Right.
We do bargaining. All right, just reassure me. If I do these 2 weeks at home, then we're going to be done with this, right? I want to do my thing and make a deal and we're done. Then the deal doesn't start. Wait, we could be here longer. The sadness hits, the depression. And then we have to find some acceptance. Now, as Elizabeth and I would always tell people, the stages aren't linear. They're not a map. We can do them all in 1 hour. They're very organic. And I noticed, as you know, after a few years ago, the death of my younger son, acceptance was not enough. I needed more. I needed to find meaning. And that's been important to me, to look at things through the lens of meaning.
Let me stop you right there.
Right.
Because I want to read some of the losses that you all are putting in the comments right now.
Great,
okay.
great.
And then I want to talk about how, in the face of some of these losses that, you know, you're experiencing, how you try to find acceptance for this loss and how you find meaning in the face of it. I've felt a loss of freedom. I've lost my job, my honeymoon, my freedom. I've lost the ability to connect with people, the ability to play with my band and play live. My livelihood feels gone. I can't visit my 93-year-old mother. Energetically, grief is shown in the lungs. I'm missing my students, not being able to see my grandson. I'm grieving the connection. I live alone. Oh, wow. I was in the middle of a divorce and selling the house. And now this. On and on and on. So how do you accept this very real loss that you're feeling?
There's not a big moment of acceptance. We have to just find
There's no easy fix? David, come on.
No,
I brought you on here for the easy fix.
For goodness sakes, I know. But there are things we can do. We can recognize our power is actually in the acceptance. If I accept a loss of safety, what's in my control? I'm going to wash my hands. I'm going to physically distance. And when we begin to find those senses of control again in that acceptance, we're no longer a victim. Because I can't heal a victim, you can't heal a victim. We need to find our power again through acceptance.
Gotcha.
Then we can go on to look what's after this and how we can come out of this hole.
So you also said meaning. And obviously finding small meaning in your day-to-day life is not going to bring back the loss of a job or the loss of these big things. You've experienced a major loss in losing your son. So how does small everyday meanings help you move through the process of grieving a major loss?
And I want to connect that to something you talked about before, that we can feel guilty in comparison to the people in Italy about feeling guilty about something small we've lost. And I want to tell people, as someone who has had a major loss, you still get to feel sad about your job loss. You still get to feel sad about the wedding canceled. You get to feel sad about spring break. You know, there's no comparison in grief. Your loss doesn't negate mine. Mine doesn't negate yours. I am heartbroken forever about my son dying, but I'm also disappointed you and I aren't in a live studio doing this. I'm also disappointed we're not seeing our friends. Major, macro, and micro losses can exist together. And there's no judgment in grief. We got to release that judgment.
Why is it critical that we start calling what we're feeling when it comes to the powerlessness grief? Why is that so critical?
Because otherwise, if we don't know what's going on with us, we judge our sadness, we judge our anger, we judge our normal reactions. And judgment demands punishment. We will punish ourselves, punish others, be quick, you know, be tense. If we can allow our feelings, and we're really the first generation that has feelings on feelings. We feel sad. We don't think we should feel sad. We feel angry. We've got no right to feel angry. If we can stay in our first generation of feelings, they'll move through us in a few minutes. And then we can go to the next thing. We can find what we need to do next. But if you're spending your energy suppressing every emotion, you're missing your power.
You know, how many of you have made yourself wrong for the things you feel you're sad about losing? Not going on spring break, school's getting canceled, you know, you got to work remote, whatever it may be. You can't move around. You can't go to the dog park. You've made yourself feel bad about that. I know I have, because I sit here and I make myself wrong. And I'm like, well, at least you have your health. At least you've got, you know, you're able to pay your bills right now. And if you're not going to be able to pay them, you know, in the future, you'll worry about it then. Like, I beat myself up. And what happens when I do that is I feel even lower. And what you're saying is true. The second you allow yourself to validate what you're feeling, you move right through it, which then puts you in the pathway of being able to take care of yourself and the people around you.
Because our emotions need motion. They need to move. Our emotions need motion. We can't heal what we don't feel.
You know, it's interesting. Somebody's saying, my feelings right now aren't the same as the grief I felt when I lost my husband to cancer, but they're the same as the aftermath. And I had this thought too, that it's sort of like you know, when you lose somebody you love, there is so much adrenaline around the planning and the memorial or the funeral and people come and it's super busy, sort of like the beginning of this. And then all of a sudden the dust settles and everybody goes back to their life. And there you are alone in this new normal. And I think collectively, that's what the globe is going through. So accepting it is one thing. Feeling what you're feeling, I heard you say, is another. Do not suppress these emotions. Call it grief.
You have a right to your grief. You have a right to your grief. Whether it's big or small, you have a right to it.
So how do we find meaning? How do you find meaning in something that feels so meaningless or so unbelievably strange?
And I studied for years Viktor Frankl's work. How do you find meaning in a concentration camp? How do you find light in the darkness? That's what that sixth stage of meaning really is for me. And we're going to come out of this with post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic growth.
Oh, did everybody get that? You're going to come out of this with post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic growth. You get to choose. So how do we choose to create post-traumatic growth for ourselves?
When we come into acceptance, when we find our power, now we have choices. And the choices are naming things as meaningful moments now. On my block, people are playing with their kids for the first time in the front lawn. You and I, with 1,000 people, are having a meaningful moment right now. These meaningful moments wouldn't have happened before this. How can we create, like you mentioned, meaningful dinners you're having with your family?
Yeah.
If we can name these little moments of meaning, those are what? It's either going to be little moments of trauma or little moments of meaning will grow into the post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic growth.
I love that. David Kessler, you can find him at grief.com. Follow him online. Thank you so much for being with us. Yes.
Mel, I want to say one last thing for
Please
people who have had a death of a loved one. If you are struggling with that because people have died, they are dying, we have an online Facebook group every day, 1 p.m., completely free. People do not have to be isolated in their grief. You can find that at grief.com, and I'll post it on my social media.
Awesome. Thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it, David.
I love you.
Love you too.
Thanks.
Thank you, by the way, for weathering the technology storm. I am committed to growing during this and figuring all of this tech stuff out. I learned a lot today. Here's something that we're doing in our family that I want to share with you. And here's what I want to know. What did you learn from this conversation? Okay. What did you learn? Because what I learned is that I've got to name that feeling that I'm feeling. And I also need to make sure that I'm holding the space so that my kids are naming it too, because they are going through all kinds of stuff. The other thing that I want to share with you is that the way that I've been finding meaning is by having family dinners every night. And if you're alone, please do not eat alone. Please schedule a FaceTime with somebody every night so you have something to look forward to and so that you can find some meaning. The other thing that we've been doing that has been really helpful is I've been using this really unprecedented moment as a chance to have deeper conversations with our loved ones and asking, how are you feeling today, 0 to 10? And I've been surprised by my own answers because they're so up and down. But naming where I am, I'm a 4 today, allows my family to then ask, how can we support you? Hearing that my son is a 9 or a 10 and he's doing great lifts me up. And so you can use this simple tool, 0 to 10, as a way to connect at a deeper level, get the support that you need, and also to find meaning in this moment of time. I want to also tell you that we are going to start taking your questions. So if you have a video question, send it to me. And here's how you do it. You take a video of your question. Just say, hey, it's Mel. Hey, it's Kristen. Hey, it's Sam, whatever. Ask your question and then email it to askmel@melrobbins.com. Askmel@melrobbins.com. Let's see. I'm a little discombobulated because of all the tech challenges today. So I'm going to sign off. I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for watching Stay Connected. If you want to forward this to anybody, please do. The easiest way to do it is go to YouTube or Facebook. That's the best way. You know what I loved is you guys are writing about how this conversation made you realize you're not going crazy. You're just going through grief. And you're grieving the loss of a normal life. And that makes me so happy because that's exactly why we started Stay Connected with Mel Robbins. Because we do have a choice, whether we experience post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic growth from this situation. And we're not going to remember the day-to-day. We're not going to remember all the details, but we're going to remember how we felt during this. And you've got a chance to practice resiliency. You've got a chance to move through this. Anyway, thank you for being here. Tomorrow's going to be super positive. We're going to learn the secret tricks that optimists use to stay positive. And we're launching something really fun. I don't want to be tone deaf, but we need something to look forward to. And so we're the month of April doing a fun thing where every day we're going to do something together. It's a surprise. We're going to kick it off and explain it tomorrow, but I got you covered. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you tomorrow.